I'm not right. Free fall is exactly. He's arguing that the vomit comet it's accepted that they tell us it's a vomit comet. I don't think it even needs responding to. But on the interests of the academics, why don't they fall to the front of the plane? Well,
It's the same as the accelerating in a car.
Hang on, the camera's fixed in the plane. So he's saying that they're not falling to the front of the plane, but the camera's level with the plane. So if the plane's falling out the sky the way it is, it's only going to fall out the sky relative to the fixed camera angle. So I just think he's been a bit.
Who gives a shit? Really. What happens in free fall? Whoa, peanuts.
Sorry.
Jesus,
what the hell?
Was that your answer?
My bad. Sorry.
Who was that?
Hell of a hit, man.
That was me, man. Sorry.
I deafened everybody in my living room, so thanks for that.
I'm so sorry, man. Forgive me. Damn.
No, that was funny.
I like the second answer.
She said,
Hey, so do you guys think that we could see the Southern Cross if the sun wasn't up when it was like around, you know? Like, do you think if the sun stopped?
Who cares to be honest, who cares what he thinks? He's a fucking idiot. He's an idiot. He can't string a sentence together at the best of times. He can talk cubic capacities about an engine and a turbo and a gearbox. You know, that's respectable, but he's in the wrong hangout if he wants to talk about flat Earth because he can't get a sentence together, to be honest.
Something weird going on with this stream deck. Got my little live light on the OBS deck, but we're not live. It's just the recording that's carrying on, but it hasn't taken off the light. And then earlier in the show, it had like a really glitchy stream, but there was nothing wrong with my internet connection. Weird.
I think we're being watched by the government, Nathan.
No, I think there's just a glitch with my computer and it probably needs restarting.
Yep.
Well,
if there's a problem, just turn the computer on and off.
Well,
off and on.
We'll try it. We'll go live and hopefully it'll be okay. If not, it's not.
I've noticed the last two shows there's more buffering, but you say it's not buffering on your side. But on the YouTube side,
I just check.
It's not doing that.
I just check the connection speed, and then the next thing I check is if there's an issue with the actual encoding. And if that's the case, it'll say on the OBS deck that it'll have dropped frames, and it hasn't. So Patricia has the same problems from time to time. The replay is perfect, which tells me that it has taken every frame, it's rendered it, it's all there. But when it's going out live, she gets stuttering. And I'll lower the resolution and it'll still stutter. Sometimes it'll stop altogether and you've got to reload it. And I'm like, what's going on? There's nothing wrong with her stream. There's nothing wrong with her connection. She's tested it. But there we go. It's just one of those things. I think it's just YouTube occasionally is glitchy. Or there's lots of people using the internet. Who knows? There's 101 different reasons. Anyway, I'm going to start the next show.
It's widespread internet connection. It does that.
Yeah, bugs. That's all it is. Bugs.
It's just connections of all kinds. It's a wide web, so yeah, there's going to be errors.
Is my microphone okay now, guys? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you just need to back off it a little tiny bit.
How's that? Is that better?
Even more.
Oh my goodness, I'll find the headphones over the other side of the room.
For some reason, it's just wherever you are, you've got the gain way too high because it's overloading.
Okay.
Yeah, the gain's too high.
You could just turn the sound down.
Is that any better?
Yes. Yeah.
That's better.
There you go.
Oh,
I got a new phone today, that's what it is.
Yeah, the gain's still too high, but it's okay. Right, I'm going to start.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you're currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by... Let's have a look. Whole full panel already. So saying to join, but you might not get in. We've got Was, which is presumably Was Not Was, Spec, Sleeping Warrior, Peanuts Clark, Ian, Event Horizon, Earth Flattener, Chocolate Saying, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Hey.
All the drunk
Hello.
I'm gonna have to change my name again then if it looks like Was when I'm on here.
Yeah, it does look like you're just Was, but I knew it was Was Not Was.
I'll change my name then to something else. So I don't want to be associated with Was.
Why? What is it just a coincidence that you're called Was Not Was?
Well, it's when I first started coming on here, I was talking to the drunk Was, and he said, "Are you called?" Because my name's Warren, and his name's Warren as well. So I said, "Well, no, people call me Was with an A. Why is there an A?"
Somebody's causing feedback. Is it you, Anthony?
Or it might be. I've got it on higher. Might not be now.
Oh yeah. So I said, "Oh well, the people call me Was with an A," and he says, "Oh, they call him Was with an O." So that's why I said, change my name to Was Not Was, or Was Not Was.
Was. Did you shoot the sheriff?
Yeah.
Did you shoot the sheriff?
No.
Didn't Warren B shoot the sheriff?
Didn't Warren who shoot the sheriff?
Warren B. No, didn't he? Warren B did a remix, didn't he? I shot the sheriff, but I didn't. No deputy.
Oh, I hate that song.
Warren B did a remix of it. Come on, guys. Am I the only one Am I the only gay in the village on this one, or what?
Yeah.
No, I think
We're
you're
always
right.
yeah.
There was a remix in the 90s, and I'm sure I'm on the right side here.
No, someone else is causing feedback. Who's causing feedback?
Well, it was when Was came off his mic, so it might be Was.
Oh, it was. Turn your speakers down. Anyway, any signs of curvature?
No.
No.
How do I turn my speakers down then?
Just separate your mic from your speakers. Put some distance between your speakers and your mic if you can.
Not on the Earth.
That's on my laptop. I don't have a mic.
Just turn your speakers down, whatever the laptop volume is, so you can hear us less, and then it'll feed back less. It might not be you. It'll probably still happen.
This is what happened with GeoStreamer. What you're discovering right now.
What, with feedback?
Well, it wasn't really feedback, was it? It was bleed, but it's not far off.
Right.
I'm going to claim it anyway. It's technically not right, but I'm claiming it.
Well, if anybody in the chat's got buffering, just lower the screen resolution. So if you're on a mobile device, it's the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner, quality. Just lower the quality one step. So I stream at very high resolution intentionally because we display photos and videos and I want them to look good. However, if your computer connection isn't good enough to cope with 1080p, then lower it to 720 and so on and so forth. Just go down the line until you pick one that works. You know, eventually it will stop stuttering. You just have to lower the resolution depending on how good your connection is.
I honestly can't tell the difference between 1080 and 720.
Only on big screens. They say that anything 32, you don't need 1080 over 720. But if you get onto a bigger screen or a projector, then you do see the difference. But on small screens, especially phones, you don't need it on high quality.
Yeah, anyway, that should solve anybody's stuttering problems, because there's nothing wrong with the connection as far as I can tell, but I say that a lot. I assume it's always down to people's
I know
connections.
somebody's stuttering problems it won't solve, Nathan.
What stuttering?
The Rumpus's stuttering problem. When you get him cornered, turning it down to 720 from 1080 won't make it any better for him. Come on, that was funny.
Poor Rumpus, man.
Well, it's just you're stating a fact, so I didn't see anything amusing so much as just plain truth.
Rumpus just wants y'all to believe.
Say again?
Rumpus just wants you to believe. I was thinking about the last time that he was on, and he was bringing up somebody who measured the angle to the sun, and he said it was a well-known historic fact, and he didn't understand why y'all wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, it's just like sticks in the ground.
That was in reference to Mars, wasn't it, with Cassini?
Yes, yes.
And he was like, and I said, you were going to say it was a whole body of science then, weren't you? And he was like, well, I could. Like, yeah, but where's the evidence though? I was like, well, everybody just knows it. Really? So if everybody knows it and that makes it a consensus, right, in science, a scientific consensus, is that the proof that you're relying on? Is that the evidence that you accept to be true, that everybody accepts it, therefore it's true? I don't accept that. I want to see that somebody did measure the sun. Information doesn't seem to exist. If it does exist, I'll drop the question and I'll accept that somebody has measured it. But it seems to me that there is no distance to the sun, there is no distance to Mars, there is no distance to any of them. But everybody accepts it or believes that they have. Well, that doesn't make it true.
Absolutely not. I think, was it you who was on? I think he's been on since, and it might have been Event Horizon. Was it you who was on last time he was on? Take it from your silence that maybe not.
Yeah, he's on mute. But I think it's an authority problem, Nathan, and I think that Rumpus he trusts his authority. He trusts what the textbooks say, and he doesn't understand why y'all won't believe it.
I don't know. I think he deliberately misleads him, which is what I was going to say about. I thought it was Event Horizon. It might be someone else, but he was basically.
Yeah, sorry, man. It was. I was away then for a second, but yeah, it was.
Yeah, I thought it was, because basically he's trying to misrepresent an actual scientific hypothesis or scientific prediction and substitute it with a complex hypothesis based on a formula. And he just did sleight of hand. And I know it got you annoyed. It gets me annoyed every time he does it, but I'm used to it. Whereas you kind of immediately got very triggered and were like, no, you're misrepresenting what you're telling the audience. You're saying you're doing scientific experimentation. You're not. You're developing a complex hypothesis, and they're very, very different.
It's because they do it straight away before you're maybe even paying proper attention. The first sentence that comes out of the Rumpus's mouth is the diversion into what he wants you to talk about. He wants you to define terms, and at the end of the day, he wants his correlation to be his cause, which isn't right. And the same with George as well. He wants to come in and redefine terms straight away. And it's not right. They want you to go away in their imagination somewhere with them, and it's not what we're here for. And yeah, that's why it got me triggered. That's why it annoyed me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for me, the way they misrepresent their argument makes me think that they've got nefarious intent. It's not through stupidity. It's not through delusion. It's not through wanting to conform to consensus, which is what... I can't remember who was talking. Was it you, Chocolate, that just said that? No, it was Peanuts, wasn't it? Or was it you?
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that's the case. You know, it's a bold statement. You know, it's tantamount to calling them shills, but short of that, you know, it does seem like they have nefarious intent because they're misrepresenting their position intentionally. You know, George is the most glaring example of that.
And it is straight off the bat, straight away.
Yeah, Anthony's good at spotting that. So normally when there's, you know, they'll cause a bit of disruption, then they'll lay down their terms, which is the misdirection. You know, he did it with me and I shouted at him. It's like, no, I don't want to hear your sleight of hand into formulas when we're talking about science. But they do it in a subtle way right at the beginning, so that from then on in, they're talking on their terms. You've just got to spot
and the
it.
other
You've
thing
got to
they
be on
do
the ball.
straight away is you ask them a closed question and the answer is either red or blue, they will give you a distraction, which is taking you away from the point in hand. So the answer to the question never gets answered, and they'll go where they want you to go in the conversation rather than where you've got them cornered in the conversations. And Brandon Toy is my best example for that. He was on a GeoStreamer Hangout, and there was 3 or 4 of them in there. And basically, he was about to bring up the point that the evidence that GeoStreamer was relying on was based on a model. It wasn't based on actual evidence. It was based on a model and nothing more. And Rumpus spotted it and distracted the point so much that the point got lost and got kicked out in the process, but managed to get the point lost, which is, I don't know, is it good tactics, good debate tactics, or is it terrible? Either way, he was successful.
Yeah, that's it. But that's the point, that these people aren't interested in listening to the position of the opponent and then countering with a good explanation or a good counter. They're only interested in stating their position and doggedly sticking to it, regardless, at any cost. To the point where if you're trying to get a word in edgeways with the Rumpus, he will just literally talk 99% of the time, other than when he's drawing breath, so that no one else can talk, and only his point will be heard.
Hence the name Rumpus in the Hangout.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I see it is if they are allowed to talk and spin their little web and take you on the little journey, people like, I know Tommy, who's been in the Hangout quite a lot recently, if he was able to listen to Rumpus's or George's little web of deceit, he might get caught up in it quite easily and use that as that kind of the reference back to the body of science, where Tommy would feel comfortable in knowing that that's the story that's told without realizing that it's exactly that. It's either a story, someone's imagining concoctions, or coming back with a calculation that fits their argument. And in this realm of flat Earth versus the globe, it can be very deceiving to the naive or the new to the topic. I think that's a little bit where Tommy struggles, especially with kind of Nathan's nature and a little bit with mine as well, because we've had debates. So I'll let him talk and go down his little road. But when Nathan stops him and says, no, I want your evidence, he has to understand it. Nathan's doing that for a reason, because he doesn't want those imaginings. He doesn't need to go down those paths that go nowhere and aren't corresponding with that assertion that we live on a ball and a sphere and we spin around in the earth. So to know why I was triggered and why Nathan sometimes stops these people is for the audience and people out there, which obviously the Rumpuses and the Georges and the Red Rhetorics and the Conspiracy Cats and all these other guys in the world are trying to get to, before when they get to spin their web, they've got their following. But when we've got people here, they need to stop before they go down the path and drag other people with them. They're like Pied Pipers. That's why I got annoyed.
That's the point, though. They can't actually help it. They can't accept that other people are asking the proof. They just demand that it's accepted regardless. No, that's not how it works. If you're going to make the claim, you're going to have to prove it. And that's what we're asking for. Where is that distance to the sun, please? You can't say it's the summit if you can't prove that it's true. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, don't they argue counter argument? Like, doesn't the distance and the size, impact each other? So at one moment they're arguing the size of the sun to make the distance, and then they'll argue the distance to make the size of the sun.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like a counter argument.
Yep. It's called circular reasoning or circular argument. It's like Nathan gave a good example with the fossils in a geology rock. How do you know how old the fossil is? Well, you can age the rock, so you can tell how old the fossil is. And then you ask, well, okay, how do you know how old the rock is? Well, you can age the fossil. So it's like, double speak.
And also, everything's been laid out for them. All these maths, all these formulas, and they present it as if it's already a fact. It's everybody already knows.
Yeah. How dare you challenge my belief?
Right.
Yeah, not realizing that half the time we understand this stuff better than they do, because we're the ones looking at it with a critical eye. They're just accepting it because this is what they learned when they were 3, and it just kept it moving from that point.
This is something that John LeBon's been pointing out recently. He's saying, well, when you ask people where they've got their facts from, most of the time it comes from two different places, either experts or consensus. Well, everybody knows that, Tesla's real. Everybody knows that the Earth is a sphere. Or my experts say that the Cavendish proves we're spinning. My experts say that gyroscopes prove the ether turns. It's always a referral to an expert of some kind or another. Very rarely is it down to somebody's own personal experience.
That's what bugs me out. People will take the word of experts rather than take their own senses into account.
It almost gets to the point where people say, "How dare you challenge science?" Like, I remind myself of Neil deGrasse Tyson's comment where he said, "That's the beauty of science. It doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not." Really? Well, if it's that straightforward and black and white, why is it so difficult to show where the 93 million mile distant the actual number came from?
Well,
why can't you do it?
Loosely translated, what that actually means in plain English is pseudoscience will be accepted as correct whether you like it or not. Because
Correct.
He's not dealing with science. He's an astrophysicist. So he's definitely dealing with pseudoscience. There's no cause and effect relationships being established in his field of non-science. He's a pseudoscientist. He's got no cause, no effect, no independent variable. He's just got observation. He's just got what he can call a phenomena, and that's it. He's got no science to back him. So when he says science, he means pseudoscience. You will believe my pseudoscience, is what he's saying with that statement.
Yeah.
But people like Tommy don't understand the difference between the scientific method and pseudoscience.
Well, I think people don't realise there's a difference between pseudoscience and general science or proper science at all. I think
branding, isn't
we
it?
call it as a slur.
Hold on, bear with me a second, guys. I think we've got Lenny Harry. Just double check with him in the chat. He's saying echo chambers. I'm sure there'll be a willing person to drop just for you, Lenny. Would you like to join? Let us know from the chat.
Please, Lenny, grow some balls and join.
I can drop if anyone needs to
No,
join.
don't drop. He's never going to join. Don't drop. Lenny is never, ever going to join.
He's a coward.
It's funny, you tell these guys, why don't you join the show? And they say, so I can get muted or so you guys could talk over me. It's like, no, come in here and just provide your evidence. Provide your proof. That's it. If you're not going to be an idiot, you're not going to get muted. Just provide your argument. I don't see what's so wrong with that.
Put Nathan O in a timeout as he's discouraging people from joining. So look, we've got somebody accusing the place of being an echo chamber. Just need to double check from him that he does actually want to join. Obviously he's got complaints. If he doesn't, then we'll time him out and move on.
It's very pertinent when we're asking for evidence for the main protagonists not to be able to produce any. The best we've got was Jimmy telling us, and obviously I say that intentionally with an emphasis because that's obviously it's not his real name, but the best we've got is Jimmy telling us about Cassini and Huygens, telling us didn't produce it. I had to work it out, but that's the best we've got. Well, I don't think that's acceptable standard. Send in some no-name bloke and see what happens.
And then he's adding his own spin on it.
We've got George in the chat. Did you want to join, George?
Yeah, why don't you tell us all about Coriolis, George? You can go through that one again. The Earth spins and the atmosphere doesn't, then plane should...
Hasn't George had like 4 opportunities to already prove the spin of the Earth?
And all he does is obfuscate the point every single time.
So
he's going to argue from the different position that he argued last week, which was a different position to the time before, which was the opposite position to the time before that. Just going to change his story again.
Well, I can give you a summary of the current situation with George. So currently he's got a bullet that travels straight through the atmosphere. However, the atmosphere, according to George, is attached to the Earth. Therefore, we don't have Coriolis, according to George's current accepted explanation. The bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line, and the atmosphere is attached to the Earth. No Coriolis effect. That's where we are currently.
So
Well,
who wants to
George,
drop
you want
for
to change
George?
his position?
He says he wants
You
it.
come on then, George. Maybe you can come
Does he
and
want to
explain it
join?
to me.
Sorry, did I miss a chat from him? Every time I try to join, the panel is full. If you can try now, if I can get Ian, if you could drop for us, hopefully you can hear us. Ian's place holding at the moment.
Shout out to Billy Wazza and my
There you
dick.
go. If you can join now, George, there's a gap for you.
Shout out to my dick.
Shout out to Midi
Is it
HC.
real George?
Come on, Georgie. Pick up the mic, George. I dare you to pick it up.
he's on his
Go,
way, I'm
George.
sure.
Where did he go, George?
Hey, George, good to have you. Hello.
The real one?
At least he's not a coward.
Hold on. Make sure it really is
The
him.
real one?
Is that the real George?
Yeah, is it really him?
George,
Am
Yeah,
I coming through?
I
Yes.
think I got it wrong again.
George, speak
No,
up.
kick him.
I'm here now. Okay.
Good to have you.
Oh,
So, where we left
there.
off last time, George, was the bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line.
Oh, you want to go down this path again?
Yeah, that's why you're here.
So, the bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line, correct?
Goes through the atmosphere, yes, in a straight line if you shoot a bullet.
Right. Well, the atmosphere, George, is attached to the Earth, according to you. Therefore, there's no Coriolis effect.
No, that's not the conclusion you draw from that, because the bullet is not carried with the atmosphere. It goes through the atmosphere in a straight line. The atmosphere is rotating along with the Earth. 2 reference frames.
No, that's one reference frame. So if the bullet travels through the atmosphere in a straight line and the atmosphere is attached to the rotating reference frame, that's one reference frame, George.
No, the atmosphere attached to the rotating Earth is 1 reference frame.
Yes, and the bullet travels through that in a straight line. So if you're rotating and the bullet's rotating with you in the atmosphere, then you've got 1 reference frame and no Coriolis effect, George.
No, the bullet is not rotating with you. Oh, God. Why do we
Hold
have
on,
to
it's
do
not
that?
rotating. So the atmosphere is not attached.
No, the atmosphere is rotating with the Earth. The bullet.
So if it's rotating with the Earth and the bullet's travelling in a straight line, then there's only 1 reference frame and no Coriolis effect.
That should make the game of golf really interesting.
That's not what I'm saying, Nathan. The bullet is going through the atmosphere. The bullet is detached from the atmosphere.
No, it's going through the atmosphere. Don't double speak me, senile old bastard. It's not simultaneously separate from the atmosphere and travelling through it, George. Let's get it straight. It's travelling through the atmosphere in a straight line. If the Earth is rotating with the atmosphere, you only have 1 reference frame. In the same way, George,
the bullet
stop
is in
rumpusing me.
ballistic
Stop rumpusing
flight.
me. Stop rumpusing me.
Independent
Stop
of the
rumpusing me. I haven't
atmosphere.
finished.
Why
Shut
is
your
this
mouth.
so hard
Shut
for
your
you?
mouth. Shut your mouth, Rumpus. So, in the same way, if the roundabout...
Rumpus isn't here.
Stop
Rumpus
rumpusing the
is,
hangout,
at a conference.
George.
Rumpus
George,
isn't
is
here.
it because you're cornered? Is it because you're cornered, George?
No, I'm not cornered.
Shut
You're
up
not
then. Shut up
understanding
then.
that the
Shut your
bullet
stupid mouth
traveling
till I
through
finish
the
my sentence.
atmosphere is
Shut
separate
up.
of the
Shut
atmosphere. It's
up.
invisible.
I haven't
George.
finished, George.
George.
Shut up. So, in the same way, if the roundabout had the atmosphere attached to it, it would also be 1 reference frame. But when you demonstrate Coriolis with a roundabout, obviously the roundabout isn't carrying the atmosphere with it. Because if it was, you'd
know why
only have 1 reference frame. This is why I've got a mute button. So that when Wanker Boy here, senile bastard that he is, thinks he'll ruin the end of my point, I can shut him up. Right, George, I'll say it again because you tried to rumpus my point. If the roundabout was the same as the Earth, in your example with the atmosphere attached, the roundabout would have the atmosphere attached. one reference frame. That won't work with your Coriolis effect, though, will it, George? Because if the bullet travels in a straight line through the atmosphere, then you only have one reference frame if the atmosphere is attached to the Earth.
My turn to speak now, is it?
Well, you can acknowledge what I'm saying. Are you going to acknowledge that if the atmosphere...
You're interrupting me.
You asked the question, is it your turn to talk?
Respond.
You asked me a question, is it your turn to talk? It's your turn to acknowledge that if the atmosphere is attached, you only have one reference frame.
No. You have one reference frame if the Earth is attached to the rotating object, like the Earth or the roundabout, and the bullet travels.
No, we're not talking about roundabouts being attached to the Earth. We've got a very simple example. The bullet goes through the atmosphere in a straight line, and according to you, the atmosphere is attached to the Earth. One reference frame, George. That's what you're giving us as an example.
Earth is attached to the Earth. One reference frame. Bullet.
Yes, so if we've only got one reference frame, George, we don't have a Coriolis effect.
You do, because...
Right. No, George. Just because you assert it doesn't make it so. If you've only got one reference frame, you don't have a Coriolis effect.
No, I never said there's two reference frames.
No, there isn't. If the Earth and the atmosphere are attached, then it's the same as the roundabout having the atmosphere attached. It doesn't, to give you two reference frames, you have the atmosphere and the Earth rotating underneath it separately. That's what Coriolis is. It's defined in plenty of places. Now, you find me a reference that says the Earth is attached to the atmosphere.
The Earth is attached to the atmosphere.
Don't assert it. Find me a reference for it. Bring it up on screen right now and let's pick it apart, George. Don't just assert your religious belief here. I'm sick of hearing it. We've absolutely demolished it. So bring a citation to the table.
A citation.
Respond. Don't start yapping,
Being
just
attached
respond.
to the atmosphere. I mean, this is very well known. It's obvious.
Are you dumb, deaf, or just stupid? Don't tell me it's well known. Go and get a citation for it so we can rip it a new one.
Well, you're telling us it's well known that the Earth is flat. So show me a citation. I'm giving
that's
you a
not the accepted rhetoric, though, is it?
No.
No. The accepted rhetoric here, George, the accepted standard is that the Earth is a sphere. We're ripping that a new one by pointing out the logical fallacies that are attached to it. One of which is that you can't have Coriolis simultaneously with the Earth and the atmosphere as separate reference frames, because then planes would take different durations. And obfuscators like you come here to convince people that they're only one reference frame, but you still have Coriolis. And that's bollocks.
No, it's not bollocks.
Yeah, it is bollocks. You can't have one reference frame, the Earth and the atmosphere attached, and have Coriolis. That doesn't jive. You must have two reference frames. In order to have Coriolis, you must have the atmosphere separate from the rotating Earth underneath. And if you have...
No, you don't. No, the atmosphere is not separate of the rotating Earth.
Well, then you've only got one reference frame, so you don't have Coriolis effect.
No, there's two reference frames.
No, if the Earth and the atmosphere are attached, that is one reference frame. In the same way, the roundabout would have to have the atmosphere travelling with the roundabout. It isn't, and they use a roundabout as an example because obviously the atmosphere is not travelling with the roundabout. And in order for a Coriolis effect to take place on Earth, you must also have the Earth travelling underneath the atmosphere. That is what defines the Coriolis effect. So if you haven't got the Earth and the atmosphere separate, then you haven't got a Coriolis effect.
No, the Coriolis on Earth would work whether or not the atmosphere was present. If we had a vacuum and...
We haven't got a vacuum. This is a straw man. I couldn't give a shit what you assert about a vacuum. We are not living in a vacuum.
Of course we're not, but I'm saying it doesn't matter whether the atmosphere is present or if it was not present.
It is present, so this is a straw man. You're just going to reassert your straw man. What a wanker. So whether or not the presence of atmosphere is in this equation is irrelevant, because we definitely do have atmosphere. The atmosphere that your bullet travels through in a straight line attached to the rotating reference frame, according to you, George, negating Coriolis.
No, I did not say that. The bullet is in ballistic flight. It is not attached
in
to
ballistic
the
flight.
rotating atmosphere.
It's in
the
ballistic
bullet
flight
is in
through the
ballistic
atmosphere.
flight. It's
Through the
independent.
atmosphere.
It's in a reference
Through
frame
the
separate
atmosphere.
of the
Through the atmosphere. We've gone through this 100 times. It doesn't create its own reference frame. It's traveling through the atmosphere. And according to you, it's traveling
through the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's right. Through the atmosphere in a straight line. Now, if that atmosphere is attached to the rotating reference frame, then you don't have Coriolis. I've said it about 100 times, George. You've been demolished.
No, it's not demolished. You just have a misunderstanding. A bullet
No,
going
I don't
through
misunderstand.
the atmosphere
Don't
is not
assert
the
it.
same
I'll
as
just
the
shut you
bullet
up every
going
single
with
time you do it.
the atmosphere.
I don't misunderstand. Two reference frames, roundabout and atmosphere, or Earth and atmosphere. If you're going to assert that the atmosphere and Earth system are attached and rumpus me every time I get to this point, this is why I have a mute button. Because you're going to rumpus me every time I make the devastating point. That being that if the roundabout was not showing any Coriolis, the atmosphere would be rotating with the roundabout. They use a roundabout because obviously the air you throw the ball into, which is in ballistic flight, according to your definition, then you will have Coriolis because the atmosphere is separate from the rotating reference frame. And in your bullshit world of spheres, the atmosphere is separate from the rotating reference frame of the Earth. That's what causes Coriolis. The problem being that flights...
I never said that.
Every
You're the
time.
one that's saying that.
I don't care what you say. Shut up. Your assertion is meaningless. To have a Coriolis effect, you have the atmosphere separate from the rotating Earth underneath. The problem being that that would necessitate plane journeys being radically different in east to west and west to east flights.
Nathan, let me just say what he's just said in the back chat, in the background. He said the atmosphere and the Earth are the same reference frame. You want to address that?
That's correct.
Double speak.
So they are the same reference frame, George. The Earth rotating and the atmosphere
it's
attached.
The magic word again, R.
Atmosphere and the surface of the Earth are rotating together. They can be thought of as being the same reference frame.
So therefore, it's analogous to the roundabout with the atmosphere travelling along with the roundabout. So if you've got a roundabout with the air travelling with the roundabout in the same reference frame, when you release the ball, there's no deflection because you've only got one reference frame, George. The ball in the example...
That's not true. There is a Coriolis deflection when you throw the ball because of the fact that the ball is going in a straight line in ballistic flight and the Earth and the atmosphere are rotating.
Not the Earth, we're talking about a roundabout. You're trying to double speak us again, George. So let's keep it simple. We're talking about a roundabout. Simple, roundabout. When you release the ball from the roundabout in the example on Wikipedia, the reason the ball takes a deflection is because it goes into the second reference frame, George. The atmosphere.
No, the ball doesn't.
No, so you're saying Wiki's wrong. Better get in touch with Wiki then, you senile old bastard. Let's see how fast they change that definition. Because the definition of Coriolis is simple. Two reference frames, atmosphere and roundabout, analogous to Earth and atmosphere. It's the same, George. To have a Coriolis, you've got to have a rotating frame, the Earth, and the atmosphere, a non-rotating frame. And when you scale that down to a roundabout, it remains the same. The atmosphere doesn't suddenly start travelling with the roundabout and the ball becomes in ballistic flight, generating its own reference frame. That's not the definition, George. That's just some shit you've made.
The ball will experience Coriolis effect on the rotating roundabout, whether or not the atmosphere is there. The atmosphere doesn't matter.
No, the atmosphere is there in the example. That's the second reference frame in the Wikipedia example, George.
Read further into the Wikipedia article. Go down in there where they talk about the Earth being the same as the roundabout.
Go on then. Bring it up. Let's have a look.
I don't have the page up.
Oh, what a shock.
Look it up.
Well, let's just assert
some-
that you're a senile old bastard and you haven't got the slightest clue what you're talking about, because in the Wikipedia example, it makes it very clear. You've got a rotating frame and a non-rotating frame. The roundabout and the atmosphere.
No,
It's very
just
clear.
don't
It's very
say
simple.
something.
One rotates, and when you release the ball, what you count as projectile in ballistic flight, it travels in the frame of reference that's not rotating. The atmosphere. That's the same on Earth, according to your bullshit ball. You want to obfuscate this point indefinitely and claim that they're attached. They're not. In your bullshit ball world, they're separate. It's just a big problem for
you're
flight.
the only one that's saying that they're not attached.
You're saying they are attached.
No, on the Coriolis.
Yes, I am. Yes, the atmosphere and the surface of the Earth are attached. The
No.
atmosphere in general
Yeah,
is rotating with the surface of the Earth. That's generally accepted. That's
Well, if that's generally accepted, then there's no Coriolis effect, George, because the definition of Coriolis doesn't give you a reference frame based on the ball being thrown. It's based on the actual frame of reference that it's going into, i.e. the atmosphere.
No, do you know what a frame of reference is? It's a coordinate system that one attaches to an object that might be moving or stationary. And in general, you have as many reference frames as you have moving independent objects.
That's interesting, George. So in the case of a ball and a roundabout, the ball's rotating when it's on the roundabout, and then when it's thrown into its second reference frame, the atmosphere, it travels in a straight line while you continue to rotate underneath. That is, by definition, the Coriolis effect.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead,
ask.
Spec.
If I put a spin on the ball while I'm in the roundabout, does that change the trajectory at all?
It will change if it's in contact with the roundabout, but it will not in general change. Okay, you have to differentiate it. You can have, if you put a spin on the ball, there will be a slight effect of the atmosphere on the ball. But in general, those effects are negligible when you consider the motion of the ball as a whole. Forget about the...
What are you talking about, man?
That's not true.
What are you going on about?
Does George have his own
Well,
model?
what he's talking about is if you put a spin on a ball, like, say, a baseball player...
Football. Football and a football pitch.
By having the surface of the ball spin, you can have a little bit of interaction with the
that's not
atmosphere,
true.
but that's a subtle effect.
No, it's not subtle, George. You're wrong. That's called the Magnus effect.
Yeah,
can
the
have a
Magnus effect is real, but in general, you...
Well, if you're going to call that negligible and we can see the curve, then how are you going to argue refraction?
Okay, so what's the point? You can give it a Magnus effect. Big deal.
Because it's interacting with the atmosphere, because it's travelling through it, you complete bonehead. Something you say it's devoid of, you complete idiot. It completely shits on your argument, George. Try and pay attention. I know you're getting on in age. Try and keep up with the argument, George. This destroys your position. Yeah? Because balls have got various effects, and they're based on the fact that they travel through the atmosphere. They don't create their own bloody reference frame. The atmosphere interacts with them. In the case of bullets, it's travelling through the atmosphere. The second reference frame that you claim is one.
When you have systems with many objects in
why
different
are you the
motion,
authority on this?
Each one of them has
Why
a
are you
reference frame
pretending to
independent
be
of
the
other one.
authority on this, George? Why are you pretending to be the authority? Why should we take your word for this?
Try and get something, George, that backs your position.
Why
Otherwise,
are
it's
you
just a
asserting
story,
that
man.
you're the authority here?
Well, I'll tell you what, go to that book that Quantum Eraser keeps talking about.
You're not answering my question. Are you deaf, old man? I asked why you are asserting that you are the authority on this subject.
I'm not saying I'm the authority.
Good, you're not, because you're wrong. The Coriolis effect on Earth takes place because the Earth and the atmosphere are separate from each other. That is what causes it. So you can accept that you're not the authority here, George. I'm going to tell you that I am the authority because I understand this and you don't, because you're a senile old bastard and you don't understand what Coriolis is. I'll tell you, George, because you're not the authority here. You don't understand it. So take it from someone who does understand. The reason you have Coriolis is because the Earth and the atmosphere are separate reference frames, George. They're not attached to each other. You're just a bonehead.
No, not at all.
Well, the hand wave dismissal won't work. You're not an authority here, George. You're a senile old bastard who's being told what's what by me. The Earth and the atmosphere in your bullshit sphere world are separate. They are not attached.
Okay, well, let's take this from...
No, don't talk into your mic so loud. Just because you're being shit all over doesn't mean you have to eat your microphone.
Okay. Are you claiming then that the Earth is not rotating?
Absolutely, without question.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let me bring something up here for you.
Only
Let's
thing
look at the book
rotating
that Quantum
we
Eraser
can
keeps
observe
quoting.
is
another
the globe
theory
of
from
the
George.
heavens. That's all we can.
Sorry,
See
what are you
that
going to
is
do to prove
rotating.
spin, George?
And the ether.
Hold on.
apparently.
What's your proof of axial rotation?
Well, would you accept a statement out of the authoritative book that Quantum Eraser uses?
Nope. We'll
No.
accept evidence that proves that it actually spins, please,
That's why I
George.
just asked you for evidence. What evidence do you have for it?
Well, there's a number of experiments you can
Well, can you
perform.
finally point
Mumble,
to one?
mumble.
Excellent. Tell us about
Well,
the
let's
experiment.
let's try one that you haven't talked about. Say you take a tall building like in Dubai or the towers in Kuala Lumpur, and if you take, say, a steel ball, and you're at the top of the tower, and you drop it on, say, you're on the east side of the tower, and you drop it. Now, if you're on a flat, motionless Earth, and you drop this say, spherical heavy object from the top of the building, it will land in a spot directly beneath it. Would you
That's
agree?
a lovely story. Have you got any evidence it's true?
Hold on. Let him get to the end.
Would you agree that if you're on a flat, motionless Earth and you're on a top building and you dropped a, say, a lead ball or a steel ball, that it should land directly beneath where you release the ball?
Sorry, my
I mean,
question...
this is
let me
common
just respond.
sense,
Let me
is
just
it not?
respond, please. My question was about evidence, and you explained that you had an experiment. So, based on the fact
Well,
that
I'm giving you evidence
sorry,
You're
George,
not.
I
that you
hadn't
can
quite finished.
establish on your own.
Hadn't quite got there, George. Just try and be patient. So, George, you said you had an experiment. So, I'd like you to give me the hypothesis for this experiment, please.
Hypothesis
George.
is if I'm at the top of a tall building and I release it, it should drop and hit a spot on the earth, on the pavement, at the base of the tower or the base of the building, directly beneath the object.
Sorry, can you break it down to me in the independent and dependent variables, please?
Oh,
God.
Georgie boy.
Don't
Quantum
interrupt
eraser.
him. Don't interrupt him.
Come on, George, you can do this.
Don't
Okay.
interrupt him.
Dependent variable will be the spot, the position of where the ball lands, the position on the pavement. That is
No.
independent variable.
That would be the dependent variable.
Oh, I mean the dependent variable. That's the dependent variable, where it lands on the pavement.
Sorry, a dependent
The
variable.
independent variable
Hold
would
on,
be
George. I just want to
the
get some clarity.
velocity at the top of the
George,
building.
let's just take it one step at a time. So your dependent variable is your observed phenomena. So can you just explain to me this naturally observed phenomena again? I'm a bit confused.
Okay, you release the ball from the top of a building. Where
Sorry,
it lands
I've just got to
on the
interrupt you straight
pavement
away.
at the base
I've
of
got
the
to
building,
interrupt you,
that's the
George.
observed
George,
phenomena.
I've got to
That is
interrupt
the
you. I'm really
dependent
sorry.
variable.
George,
The
George,
position
George,
of where
George,
the
I've got to stop you, my
ball
friend.
lands.
George. I asked for your
Yes.
naturally observed phenomena. You see, in science,
I just said the
George.
naturally observed phenomena is where the ball lands after you release it.
That's not a natural phenomenon. That would be man-made, i.e. you did
Oh
that.
my God. No, man doesn't make the position of where the ball lands.
No, you dropped it, George. That would be the cause of that ball falling.
Oh my God.
No, oh my God, George. It's okay. I know you're a senile old bastard who doesn't understand science. Like you don't understand the Coriolis effect. So I'll take you through it a step at a time. The first thing you do if you are adhering to the scientific method is you observe a phenomena. Now that phenomena will take place in the natural world, not man-made.
Okay, so is a bullet being shot from a roundabout a natural phenomena? Is that what you used to prove Coriolis?
Definitely not. I wasn't trying to prove it with scientific evidence. It's a mere demonstration of the fact that you see a deflection if you have a rotating reference frame and a second non-rotating reference frame. The cause and effect isn't necessary to establish with science. It is merely observable and demonstratable every single time you have a rotating reference frame and a non-rotating reference frame. You don't need to validate this with science. It's patently bloody obvious.
Well, it's bloody obvious that the Earth's atmosphere is rotating with the Earth.
No, it's not patently obvious that the Earth is rotating at all. We tried to get to some proof of rotation, and you said you had an experiment. Unfortunately, like so many times, it turns out that this isn't an experiment. This is bullshit.
No, not at all.
Yes, totally. Because if it was an experiment, it would be the expression of a hypothesis, a scientific prediction. That's not what we're doing though, is it, George? We're dropping balls off buildings and just coming up with a hypothesis. Now, if this was scientific, the first thing you would do is present the systematic experimentation that had taken place in lieu of the hypothesis. You'd also be able to formulate it with both an alternative and a null, something which you have not done, George, because this isn't science. As I said, this is bullshit.
George,
bullshit, not science, George,
Yeah,
not an
ask your
experiment.
question,
Bullshit. Bullshit, mate.
Real quick, you say that because the Earth and the atmosphere are attached, this is why we don't feel some insane wind, right?
I mean, if you're trying to maintain that the Earth is rotating beneath the atmosphere and the atmosphere is stationary, you'd be feeling the wind equal to the tangential velocity of the surface of the Earth, and we don't experience that.
So is it impossible that the reason we don't feel that wind is because we're not spinning?
Oh.
Well, that's one way to look at it, but we have sufficient evidence.
Why
this
is what I'm saying. Like, why jump to the conclusion of, and I get it, this is what we're
But I'm
taught,
telling you that I was just trying to explain this. You can test to see if the Earth is rotating or not. One way to do it is to drop a heavy object off a very tall building and see.
Stop! Don't piss this in our face again. This is not scientific evidence. I've already gone through it. Yet again, circle jerk, asshole, senile old bastard George just pisses it back in our faces. This is not scientific evidence.
What's your problem, you sociopathic twit?
Sorry, is that an ad hominem? Because you haven't given me a response to my argument. I've demolished your experiment based on its zero adherence to the scientific method. It's not based on a valid scientific hypothesis, which would be a scientific prediction. It's based on you dropping a ball off the top of a building and making an assertion about what wouldn't happen if the Earth was flat. That, sir, is bollocks. And based on my destruction of your bollocks, I will assert, because you've asserted such bollocks, that you are a senile old bastard. That's not an ad hominem. It's based on my destruction of your shit argument.
No, there are several. That's just one among several tests that you can conduct to test to see whether or not the Earth is rotating.
Are these scientific tests?
You can make them scientific if you wish.
Make them scientific. Give me your scientific evidence for the Earth rotating, George. So far, total fail. Bullshit from a senile old bastard.
It's not total fail.
Yeah, total fail. I asked you to formulate a hypothesis, and you couldn't even distinguish between the independent and dependent variable. Anthony had to point it out to you, you senile old bastard. You don't understand
didn't.
science.
I just-
That's why you're interrupting me. Stupid people interrupt when they should be listening.
Anthony was just agreeing with me that
No, he wasn't agreeing with you. He was taking apart your stupid, non-scientific hypothesis. If you still think it's scientific, please give me the alternative and null.
is that the best you got, you?
Yeah, give me the alternative and null hypothesis. If, you senile old bastard, you still think this is scientific, then give me the alternative and null. And when you don't, I will reassert that you are a senile old bastard.
No, I'm not senile at all. I just,
Don't tell me what you're not. Give me the alternative and null hypothesis for your dropping a ball off a building, you senile old bastard. Do it now. Don't mess around giving me ad hominems.
Give me your money and piss off. Okay, your
What's he
20,000.
talking about money now?
I said I am going live in about a week with a challenge to all.
I couldn't give a shit. You won't listen and answer because you're being destroyed. That's why I'm getting away with calling you names. Not because they're ad hominems, because they're facts based on your failure. Give me the alternative and null hypothesis. Give me the alternative and null for your experiment, George. See, I've already told the audience that this is a total fail. You said it wasn't, so I've now challenged you again to validate your science by giving me alternative and null, and you won't.
George, just answer the question. Come
What's
on.
the alternative and null hypothesis for this
Which
experiment?
question now?
What's the alternative and null for this
Question.
experiment?
What is? Two of you were talking at the same time.
What is the alternative and null hypothesis for your so-called bullshit pseudoscience of dropping a ball?
I'm not even gonna.
What, attempt to justify your pseudoscience? Yeah, I know, George. That's because it's not science and you are asserting it as science. Hence me calling you a senile old bastard.
No, no.
Oh, hand wave dismissal from George. Yeah, you can try again. I'll give you one last try. George, what is the alternative and null hypothesis for your pseudoscience bullshit of dropping a ball off a building?
And why would it not be science?
Don't ask me a question. You just have to give me a null and an
No, I am.
alternative.
You're the one that makes an assertion that you can't possibly use a test
Because
to conduct
hearing a
science.
story and then retelling it is not science.
You've asked me a question. Why isn't it science? Because, George, if it was a real scientific experiment, it would be the expression of a scientific prediction. A scientific prediction is a hypothesis, and it takes the
It's
form
not
of
fiction,
alternate
it's been
and
conducted
null.
at universities.
He's just
It's
going to
been-
rumpus me. See, every time he asks a question, I give him the answer, demolishing this senile old bastard, and he talks all over me. Don't you, George?
George,
The dropping the ball has been conducted.
Oh, we're moving on, right? Right, are we moving on away from this shit now? Are you going to give me an alternative and a null, or are you just going to keep talking about the pseudoscience experiment?
It's not a pseudoscience experiment.
Oh, it's not a pseudoscience experiment. I'm not going to give you a null, but I'll disagree with it not being pseudoscience. If it was science, you'd just rattle off the null and you'd rattle off the alternative. You don't have it.
At least answer this, George. Is dropping a ball off a building, is that a natural phenomenon? Yes or no?
What are you looking for? Natural phenomena?
Yeah, natural phenomena. That's precisely what we're looking for, George. That's science. You unbelievable Dumbo. That's what science is. The study of the natural world, George. That's why Dumbos like you don't go very far in science, because they assert that dropping balls off buildings is natural phenomena. That's why you're stupid. That's why we're all having a damn good laugh at you. You've been utterly demolished. You came here to defend your position on Coriolis, and you've moved on to spinning ball Earth by dropping balls. It's pathetic.
No, you asked. You were the one that asked me what proof do I have that the Earth is moving? Or
Yeah, and you said I've got an experiment. So now we've ripped that one a new one too, George. You said you've got an experiment. We've got to the point where I say it's not science. Give me the null, and you can't.
No, see, this is where you're wrong, Nathan.
See, I'm not going to accept a hand wave dismissal, George. I'll just reassert it again. If your proof, your test, which is definitely not an experiment, was actually science, you'd be able to rattle off the alternative and the null hypothesis immediately, because that's what they'd been using for the experiment. An experiment is a hypothesis test. How many times have I got to tell you? Right, you're just not getting it because you're stupid.
Please,
No, where do you get
chicken,
having to
please.
only observe
wait,
natural
Arlen.
phenomena? That's the whole idea in science, is to design and conduct experiments to test hypotheses.
Yeah, an experiment is a hypothesis test. And in the hypothesis, you have a dependent variable. And that would be your naturally observed phenomena, George.
So do you
Don't ask me a question, shit for brains. I'm sick of hearing your stupid old words, right? You're a nutter. You don't deserve to be here. You're just stupid.
do you
Could have
believe
said it better
you
myself.
Don't
accept
ask me
that-
what I believe. How many times have I got to ask you for the alternative and null for your stupid, ridiculous, come from the mouth of a senile old bastard experiment that's not an experiment? How many times have I got to ask you for the alternative and null?
To test whether or not matter is made up of electrons and protons. Though we can't see them, we know they're there.
Oh, what a load of crap. Another assertion about some straw man that we're not talking about. A minute ago we were dropping balls off buildings to prove the earth spins. Now we're talking about bloody electrons that we can't see. Ham-handed segue by George the senile old bastard. When is he ever going to concede that he can't formulate a scientific hypothesis out of something he's claimed is an experiment?
It's a deduction
You don't
based
have
on
to
chemistry,
be
George.
observing only natural phenomena in order to test whether or not something is true. That's
Well,
the
then
whole
it's not
idea behind
science.
science.
Then it's
is to
not
design
science, you senile old
experiments
bastard.
to conduct tests.
That's what science is. A study of the natural world, George. Not studies of conjured phenomena in Cavendish balls and dropping balls. It always seems to be revolving around bloody balls with you heliocentric zealots.
Well, the reason why we use balls is because they're spherical objects and they're very easy to handle mathematically.
Mathematically, I couldn't give a crap. I want you to actually do science, not maths. Science, natural world. We're talking about sphere Earth. That's the world. Couldn't get any more close to the definition. We're studying the natural world, and you want us to segue away from that and look at mathematics, don't you, George?
No, I'm saying the reason why we use spherical objects is they're very easy to
don't
determine
care.
where the center of mass is. The center of mass of a
Not
sphere is
listening, are
directly
you?
at its center. It has perfect symmetry.
So what? So give me your best scientific evidence.
Well,
for the
it's easy
sphere
to
Earth.
handle a sphere. It's very easy.
As soon as I ask for scientific evidence again, I'm being told how easy it is to handle a sphere, rather than being given a scientific hypothesis, or shown any systematic experimentation, or anything that adheres to an actual study of the natural world. George wants to tell me about how easy it is to handle spheres and do mathematics. Couldn't give a crap, George. We're talking about the natural world.
Well, you just asked, why do we use spheres? I'm trying to tell you why
No,
we
I
use
asked
spheres
for
is
an
because they're perfectly
alternative.
symmetrical.
I asked for an
Sure, sure.
alternative and a null hypothesis for your pseudoscience experiment that you claim proves Earth spin. What's the null? What's the alternative for the experiment? That would be the hypothesis, George.
But
Come on,
depends on
George.
which experiment what you want to conduct.
I'm not conducting anything, dickhead. You're the one making the assertion. Try to keep up. It's really difficult when you're old. You can't keep track of your own assertions. Let's take him slowly through it. You're asserting you've got an experiment, old man, that proves the Earth spins. Do you get it, old dick? Yeah?
Well, look at Mr. Sociopath.
Yeah, I'm not going to take your ad homs because you've not taken anything apart in terms of my argument, mate. I'll call you a senile old bastard because you don't understand the Coriolis effect, and it's taken 6 attempts of us explaining it, the ones who are in authority and know how it works, to you, who thinks he's an authority but is just continually wrong because you're senile. That's not an ad hominem, that's based on your lack of understanding of Coriolis.
No, it has nothing to do with senility. I mean, the fact that you keep maintaining this stuff is because of your sociopathic, narcissistic tendencies that you.
That's just an ad hom. You've not taken my argument apart. My argument being that you claim you've got an experiment. I've asked for the alternative and the null, and you haven't given it us, George. All you're doing is ad hom, not actually addressing my argument that you don't have a null and an alternative hypothesis. That would be science. You don't have that.
No, we do have that.
Just another hand wave dismissal from George. So this was what you presented to science. We've ripped it a new one, and your assertion at the end of us ripping it a new one is, yeah, we do have science. What? Have you got the body of science? Is it the science that Rumpus describes with feelings? Is that the science that you've got, George? The science that concerns itself with things? Is that the science that you're using? Or is it the real bullshit that you actually have? Pseudoscience, not science. Not
You
formulated
can claim,
hypothesis.
you can use all these descriptors you want, but that doesn't make it false. Bullshit doesn't make it false because you don't understand these concepts. The fact that you don't understand these concepts is your failing, not the failing of science and mankind
That's
in
an
general.
excellent
George,
rebuttal.
these concepts are just your imagination, mate. That's the thing. They don't
No,
have
it's
any
not
basis in reality. If
All
they
this
had
stuff
any
is
basis,
very
listen,
testable.
You're
if
a
they had any
filthy,
basis in reality, you'd be able to back it up with something. You
liar.
haven't.
To test all these
George,
things, and
you
they're
are the
verified
worst
time and time again.
sniveling,
George.
lying deceiver I've ever had on this panel. Ever.
Oh,
If you had any
Arwen.
You
basis
are
in
Arwen,
the
you're
reality,
worst.
just butthurt because you don't understand how RF energy travels in a vacuum. I mean, come on,
So
get
still
over
no,
it, man.
still no
You were
null then,
wrong.
George. We were talking about Earth spin.
Huh?
I'm going to give you one last chance before I round the show out. Please, can you give me an alternative and null hypothesis for your experiment?
Of the ball being dropped, okay. The null hypothesis would be if the drop ball will not land directly beneath itself.
You know
If
what
you're
a
on a
null
flat, motionless Earth,
Sorry.
common
Do you know what a
sense,
null
the drop
hypothesis is?
ball should land directly beneath the point of where it's being released.
Is
Sorry.
that
And
just
in
null?
actuality,
George,
if you actually do that,
George,
it does not happen.
George,
The
do you know
ball
what null-
drifts to the east
Do you
every
know what a null-
time.
You're just
And because
blabbering
that is
on and on.
because the top of the building is rotating at a faster tangential velocity than the bottom of the building because of the
So-
Earth's rotation.
A
When you release the
hypothesis,
ball,
George,
it has
George,
a
George, this is
faster
tiring.
lateral velocity than the bottom of the building.
This is just
Hence,
Gish Gallop.
it appears
George,
to drift to the
George.
east, and it does not hit a spot directly beneath itself.
So can you give it me in the
Not
form of...
true.
That's
That's
because of the
air
Earth is
friction.
rotating.
Freaking air
Arwen?
friction.
Arwen.
Hold on, Arwen.
So, George, I'd like it in the form of
Air
independent...
friction has nothing to do with it, Arwen.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, thanks a
Arwen,
bunch,
hold
Arwen.
on.
doesn't.
Thanks a bunch,
No, it
Arwen.
doesn't.
So, can you give it me with the independent and dependent variable formulated into the alternative hypothesis, and then the zero difference, the null?
It's just spinning more idiotic stories.
Oh, for God's
I've
sake,
seen
Arwen.
this demonstrated.
That's it.
Arwen,
Hijack this
Arwen.
point, Arwen. Well
Come
done.
on, please.
Just
George.
Yeah, Arwen's really great with his ad hominem
Oh, yeah, I knew it.
adjectives.
I knew I
mean,
wouldn't
this
keep
is-
George on
that's
track.
the best
Thanks a
he
bunch,
has.
That's
Arwen.
called
You know?
being
That's it,
accurate.
that's it, Arwen. Open up
Wow,
your attack when
that's
I've got him
accurate,
absolutely
Arwen.
on the ropes.
Bastard.
Well done, Arwen.
George,
Thank you
George,
so
focus,
much.
focus, George.
If you want accuracy, look in the mirror and you'll see a dumbass.
Yeah, check it out, George.
Oh,
I'll ask you
God.
again.
Come
I don't
on.
mind keeping you on track, even with Arwen trying to ruin this for me. Thank you so much, Arwen.
Yeah, Arwen's always
Ruin
trying to ruin it.
anything.
Why don't you mute Arwen so he doesn't, come in here with his derping?
Just
The
pay
fuck
attention
out
to
of here,
Nathan.
piece of
Pay
shit.
attention
Just
to
try
Nathan.
and pay attention, George. I know it's difficult, age and all. So we've got an alternative and a null hypothesis that needs to be formulated. Oh, he's dropped.
Ah,
Oh, he's given up. Because he's completely cornered. The point that I could have smashed it and taken his head off, Arwen destroyed the point, though. Thanks, Arwen.
You're welcome.
Shout out to Patricia Steer.
Yeah.
What up?
Shout out to Patricia Steer. That's a nice way
hey,
to end
Patricia.
it. Well, now that
Hey, if
George is
is
gone,
trying to
that's
come
the end
back,
of
I
that
can
point.
help out.
So,
If he's been sniped, I don't think he can come back.
I don't think he was sniped.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just dropped at the point that he was absolutely cornered about giving an alternative and null hypothesis for his bullshit pseudoscience of dropping something off the top of a building to prove the Earth spins. I'll just say it one more time. There is absolutely zero scientific evidence for the spinning ball Earth. There's none. If you try and prove that the Earth is a sphere by finding evidence of R, you'll come up against a brick wall and people looking at lights in the sky. If you try and find evidence for the spinning Earth, you'll find obfuscators like George telling you about pseudoscience experiments that they make up on the spot and have absolutely no scientific validity to them whatsoever. And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, then you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
I asked, like, Candace, please stop. The guy just talked nonstop. And he had
Honestly,
so
I
many
don't.
lies.
I hardly blame you, Arwen, because
There's so many lies. Like, it's not. He wasn't even actually properly defending anything. He was just making up completely made up crazy stories.
You are right.
Like
Well,
the whole thing.
He's almost as good at
But
rumpusing
that
as
story about
Rumpus.
the ball, okay, that's just not true. It displaces not because of some freaking Coriolis effect, but because of the wind pressure that's being caused while it's being dropped. It displaces it. It's a very specific other scientific effect that's described that falls in the turbulence category, specifically with balls. Like if you just drop a brick, it doesn't do that. It's a very unique aerodynamic effect. Anyway, I was just sick of it. I just couldn't stand that guy.
Me too. He's wound me up, Arwen, and I took it out on you, so I'm really sorry. My bad for taking it out on you, Arwen. It's not your fault. He's winding up the whole hangout, so that's the whole purpose of him doing it. So I shouldn't really turn on you for him winding you up, which is all he's doing it for.
Could you even hear him? Because he literally was just talking minutes on end, non-stop. It was just freaking insane.
Well, I almost have it on the ropes with the whole spinning thing because there's something called rifling, right? And that causes the bullet to spin. And over a long distance, it's going to roll to the right because it's clockwise, right? So that's actually going to appear to be the Coriolis effect, but in actuality, all that is rifling. So I was trying to suck them in, but I didn't get the chance.
It's ballistics.
Bullets don't fly straight. That's not true.
He was pointing at ballistics and then pointing at things that the spell.
It's an old problem, but all of that has been corrected. Gun technology has been updated, so one of the most updated devices ever designed by humans. So all of these old problems, deviation of the bullet path and all that, has all been corrected by very advanced ballistics. They know.
Yeah, but over distance, it's eventually going to roll right. So if that's what they're using as Coriolis, over 1,000 yards, 2,000 yards, whatever, they're seeing the effect of what they call Coriolis, but all that is gun rifling.
Yeah, but that's not with sniper rifles. It's because it's a short distance gun. If you're gonna fire that super long distance, then yeah, it's not gonna perform as designed.
Yeah, when rail guns
shot as well, so the Earth would be spinning all over the place if that was true.
The sniper rifles don't have this.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
If the bullets did, say, continually pull left, for example, and you shot east or west, north or south, it would only turn left all of the time. So the Earth will be spinning all over the place in that perspective.
It's going to evade in a specific pattern.
Yeah, it's not
going to drop out of the spin, basically. Yeah, like being slung out at a very specific rate. In a very specific direction, usually. So it is the deviation. That's how they
Exactly.
treated it with the old guns. It's like, yeah, how much does this gun deviate after this distance? And so it's like, yeah, you have to just intuitively move the gun like 10 centimeters or 20 centimeters to the right or the left, however the gun was made, because they were more hand forged back then.
And exactly, my point is regardless of whether that is true or not, the fact is that the bullet doesn't fly straight. It's just it doesn't. So you can't use that as an argument whatsoever.
Yeah.
Because
But
it's
it does on the
understood.
short run, but eventually when the spin is lost, then it just warps.
Exactly.
Then it loses its perfect momentum, because that is what the spin really gives it.
It's like a curveball in baseball, American
Yeah.
baseball. You know,
Spin
it flies straight
spin
until it
gives
gets to the bat.
stabilization. It's a gyroscopic effect, basically. It stabilizes.
Yep.
That's why they do it. That's why they spin the bullets, because it stabilizes the path.
Right, and that's my argument is that what you call Coriolis is merely the effect of a bullet that has been rifled.
Right.
Right.
They want bullets to have their own reference frame, even though it defies what the Coriolis effect is, because it's something that they can
Which
actually
they don't.
show.
Yeah, they can't. You're explaining one phenomenon, but not taking into consideration the fact that the bullet is not flying straight. You assume it, but it's not.
Right.
It does, but it loses its. Eventually, it just falls out of its path. That's
Just
how it
So,
riddled.
goes.
so,
Riddled
so,
with
at,
double
so
speak.
when George first came on, he stated that the atmosphere is separate from the globe, right?
He's constantly double speaking this
So, but
and denying that he.
He basically said he was separate but attached.
but doesn't that go against his own model?
Yeah, so the definition of Coriolis, and there's various different references that you can find that actually say exactly what it is in reference to Earth. They are a separate entity. The Earth spin. You can't have it Velcro to the Earth. It's obviously not the case. But there's loads of problems that go along with that. I.e., you've got to have planes travelling in different directions at different speeds if there's Coriolis effect, because essentially it's travelling into the second reference frame. It's really clear. You just have to go to the Wikipedia definition of it. You've got a roundabout where the ball being thrown, the ball gets thrown, because it's no longer on the rotating roundabout, it's just travelling through the air, you see the deflection from the roundabout. And the same is applied to the Earth. If the Earth had a Coriolis effect, you'd shoot the rifle, and the Earth carries on turning underneath while it travels straight, or as much as possible straight, through the atmosphere. But, as Spec points out, you don't have a straight bullet to begin with, but that's the one thing they know and don't admit to, because they could show, potentially, the effect of a deflection. Only on a bullet, though, not on a plane.
Yeah.
The same thing with this ball dropping stuff is that you don't know what kind of spin they put on it. Even if it was a micrometer spin, over time, that's going to increase the velocity and change the trajectory.
Right.
And Arwen actually
Centrifugal
was
forces
right.
have so many effects on
Well,
different layers. It will rearrange the pressures, everything. It's gonna
Too
be
many
weird.
assumptions of straight travel is what was my point that I was trying to make.
Well, Arwen also brought up air friction, and I think that does play a huge role in it.
Of course. It's travelling through
We
the
don't
air.
live in a vacuum.
Right, that's
you
what he
don't.
tries to take it to, though, so there's no effects of
That's
the atmosphere
impossible.
on it. Like, no, it's travelling through the atmosphere. It's as simple as that, but that's what ballistic flight is. We had to look up the definition last time we was on. It's travelling through space. Well, that space, in the case of Earth, is the atmosphere. That's the space it's travelling through. Now, for there to be a Coriolis effect, that space must be separate. A separate reference frame to the Earth that spins underneath. So that's the only reason you'd have a Coriolis effect. The reality is we don't have a Coriolis effect, but we're not spinning. It's just the most double-speaky subject there is.
Well, that's assuming that the atmosphere is not changing too. There's too many variables that they're not taking into consideration.
Right.
They're just ignoring them, aren't they?
Anyway, right, I'm going to leave you guys
I
to
have
it.
to say, before we all drop, to say that George, he seems to really apply the double speak actively. He's actively using it. I think that he's probably had quite some experience using that on explaining the ball to children that are very intelligent. because he uses his obfuscation tactics and his doublespeak denial very, very cleverly. I'm just noticing
frustrating
this.
because
He's
it's not
he
working
is
on
a
us.
vile deceiver, and
Yeah.
he knows it.
But
He
every
is a
time-
professional liar.
Every time he
I
does
think
it,
he-
and we point out where he's double
Really
speaking,
evil,
he just
and I can
rumpuses.
feel it.
Every
Yeah.
time he does it, and we point it out, he just rumpuses the hangout, so that when you get to the devastating point at the end, he talks over it, so that people don't get to hear it. That's his only tactic now. He's just
He
become a
takes
rumpus.
pride from his deception. He takes
Right.
pride that he is deceiving people. It makes him feel good about himself. That's the sick thing with him. And that's why he keeps coming back, because he is the real sociopath.
Right? Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah,
projection.
that's very true. Yeah.
Lots of projection. You're right,
Do
Arwen.
you guys feel that too? That he's like really enjoying himself when he's obviously lying and double speaking. He's not like
enjoying accusing
genuinely
Nathan of doing
confused
exactly
or
what he is.
anything. He's not. He sometimes he just doesn't listen at all.
He does it for a laugh because he
Nothing.
thinks it's funny.
I know he's far from admitting that he's wrong. I know that.
And then in the middle of his nonsense, he'll say, "Oh, and I've got 20,000 for anybody who can prove the Earth is flat."
Well,
Yeah,
Shut up,
exactly
George.
that. What is
Shut up,
going on
George.
now? I'll tell you another story now. And now you've got me on one story. I'll start telling you another story. It's just
the only reason they
it's like
did
a
that.
cat on the top of a hot tin roof, and he jumps off one spot onto another spot and points at that spot that he's just come from. Then he jumps back onto that spot and then points at the spot that he's just jumped from. He's always arguing from the place that he's just jumped from. It's ridiculous. The man just talks in circles and ends up where he was at the start, and we got nowhere.
Indeed.
I think the only reason why they did that is because Jay Disby did the 10K dollar challenge, and so he's coming up and saying 20K. That way, it turns it back on us.
Yeah, but it's what
Right,
else? You got?
gentlemen, thanks again.
Thank you,
Cheers.
Nathan.
All right.
Peace
All right,
out.
Nathan.
Later.
Cheers, Nathan.